Welcome to this meetup, CCU meets AIxDesign. I'm Fabian van Sluis. I'm the creative director of Creative Coding Utrecht, and we're a platform that stimulates digital creativity and creative coding as artistic practice. And we do this by organizing these kind of meetups, and we always experiment with the different kind of forms of meetup. Now this is kind of like a cozy setting at home. And we'll have it's also a hybrid format, so we have also a lot of people online watching. Hello. And so, yeah, what did I want to say? Today we have a meetup around AIxDesign, and just as creative coding, it's a buzzword. Nobody knows actually what it actually means, coding. When we organize events, it's not only about coding, it's about the community that's around the creative coding scene. It's not about the code itself, it's also about the methods, the principles, and the ideologies that the community use in shaping this practice. And I think AIxDesign is doing some wonderful work to also demystify what AI is, addressing also all the issues that surround this practice. And I think I give the word to Nadia, only before I mention that in 3 weeks from now, we are organizing a festival called Art Machines, and it runs from 7th till the 11th of December. It's a big program with workshops, a conference, an algo rave, an audiovisual concert night, and much more. So stay tuned, we'll announce the program quickly, soon, hopefully. And I leave it with that.
Thank you. Nice. I'll be there at the Art Machines. Hi, everyone here and people home. I'm not sure where to stand. Yeah, this is fine. Hi, I'm Nadia Piet. I started AIxDesign community 2 years ago. And actually, that was in the middle of lockdown. So a lot of what we do and did is online. And having like physical gatherings with 3D, people is like a new thing we do. But it's really nice that you're here. So AIxDesign is a community-driven organization, sort of exploring this intersection of AI and design. The name is not very original, but it means that you immediately get what we do. We're exploring that X, right? So every way that AI and design sort of meet each other. That's both so how AI influences design and creative disciplines. So we've seen all this like, hype around like image generation, but we're also exploring AI in like music or film, sort of across creative disciplines, and not trying to automate it, but rather just exploring this role of like computational or algorithmic creation in your practice as a creative, whatever that means. And then also the other way around. So how does like design and the practice of design and sort of this way of thinking, how can that shape AI so that we can sort of steer it to be more of what we want and less of what we don't want in the world. So it's kind of both ways. And so it's very broad in terms of like the people that are in the community. Some people are UX researchers, some people are creative technologists, some people are like design researchers, or data scientists. Most people are like multiple of these things, and a lot of like slashies. You'll see that in the team as well. Yasmin, you're a slashie. So people are like, oh yeah, I'm a designer / developer / researcher / like I make ceramics / I do, yeah. So that's most of the people in the community, I think, and the team. And I'm here, so I started the community. Actually, Kwan's been with me since day 0 as well. Karina is also part of our team, and then there's Yasmin and Abdo online because they're not in the Netherlands, so they will share a little bit about their projects with you. And if my ghost in the machine can scroll a little bit, I'll just share a little bit of like the programs we've been doing this year. And yeah, we started in 2020. And we're very much still figuring out who we are as an organization. But this year we finally got to actually run some programs that are a bit more organized than just doing random little event here and there. So there's this project which AIxDesign cartography. So when people are basically, when you say, oh, I work at this intersection of AI and design, I saw this really fun tweet the other day that's like, Mom, please help, please pick me up. I'm at the intersection of art and technology. People look at you a little bit like, what the hell does that mean? And like, is that a real job? And also, yeah, what do you actually do? So we're kind of mapping this intersection and like organizations and practices and tools or, projects that are sort of exploring this space and sort of gathering them all as a resource for people who are interested in the space, kind of as a navigator, if you will. So yeah, literally a map. So that people can sort of find their way around that space. So it's more like a research project in which we are using AIs like research methods, but it's more like meta. Can we scroll? Then a big project we did this year was AI Playground, which was all around making AI more accessible for creatives and makers. So we had like 4 streams, and one was like exploring AI and visual arts, one was AI and music or sound, and so on. One that was about AI and the body, or like using kind of your physical body as an interface or as an input. And then AI and sound, and we had like artist talks and workshops that were accessible to anyone with zero like coding knowledge, and all of this is also on YouTube so that people can visit it later at any point. And this is something we want to definitely keep building on, so exploring with creatives who have a sort of pre-existing like creative practice what AI means for them or might mean for them, and how it can sort of show up in the process in a meaningful way. Scroll. Then there's AIxDesign Lab, which Yasmin will tell us more about later. It's basically where we are experimenting with AI in our own practice. So we create events and content, and we write things, right? And we make images for the things we do, and we write about and so on. So we're kind of doing like experiments using AI in our own process, and then sharing our learnings or our reflections on that. Very often the reflection is that it only works in very specific like context, or the tools are still very limited, but it's fun to sort of explore this in a playful way, and then share our insights basically and code. And scroll, I think that's the then we have everyday data activism, which Abdo will talk about. And this one is more the other way around, so not so much AI for design, but more design for AI. So a lot of people feel quite at the mercy of big tech, justifiably so. So how can we sort of subvert or, fight back or resist in small ways that aren't just like, I don't use any social media, but how can we sort of poke at those systems in our everyday interactions? And we sort of explore these things through participatory workshops and just having a lot of conversations with people. But Abdo will tell a bit more about that later. Scroll. And then those were a lot of the programs we did this year. And there's this one, Design for Data Rights, which is more about, what role does actually like policy and law play in protecting people's data rights, and how can we make that a more integral part of the design process? So again, that one is much more about like product design, UX design. And then there's just a little join us thing. So right now we're on Slack, but then on all the channels, and very much still exploring like where we want to be present and the ways in which we want to sort of have these conversations and interactions with people. Anyway, that was, I think, my quick introduction. We'll go on to, listen to some of our, basically, Abdo and Yasmin sharing a little bit about the program. And there will be breaks to chill and chat. And I would like to know what you're doing, because you have a reason for being here, even though it's like rainy and cold outside. So I'm very curious to know what's your interest in this space. And I hope you have fun with all the other things we'll tell you. Kwon, do you want to introduce the next bit?
Hi, so I'm Kwon, and I'll be moderating the event today, or the meetup. And maybe moderating is a weird word because we're in such a really cozy living room space. But just to introduce you guys a bit to the program, wait, before I introduce you guys to the program, just maybe like an important announcement. We are recording this. So for the people online and people here, if anyone doesn't want to be seen in the camera, or yeah, just let us know. And yeah, to get started with the program, Yasmin will take us on to the icebreakers, AI icebreakers. Excuse the pun, which is something that she's been developing as part of our AI and design lab. And after that, we'll go to Abdo's presentation. He'll present some more on data activism and prior to how that project got to be like about data decolonialization, decoloniality. And we'll have a little break, let you guys explore a movement exercise that Yasmin also developed in this area here, as you grab some drinks and read more about our work there as well. And then Yasmin will talk about her art practice and how AI has like shown up in her projects as well. And yeah, let's get started.
Nice, sweet. Hello, I'm Yasmin. I just want to get a quick okay that everyone can hear me before I start blabbering. Okay, nice. Awesome, cool. So, yeah, I'm Yasmin, and I've been leading the AI tooling with AIxDesign. And so, as part of the AI Playground events that happened this year, we were thinking it would be really cool to do sort of little activities that would kind of engage the audience and kind of get the audience a little bit relaxed, a little bit inquisitive, and in sort of an easy way. And I'm really intrigued how this is going to work in a hybrid way, because I was talking to Kwan about this, and let's see how. First, I'm going to share my screen. And so I think I might have to ask Anne Lind to make me a moderator first. I think. Yes, sweet. Okay. All right. So one of the icebreakers is this activity called fill in the blanks. And this icebreaker was developed in relation to this talk with Emily Martinez, who actually is leading this project called Queer AI and is doing a lot of thinking about the biases and the limitations of text models. So one thing that I wanted to ask about sort of the situation that's going on here is I feel like everybody in person is chilling. I can see a lot of people on the couches. So I'm thinking that we could sort of do this thing where we can collaboratively add some words to this prompt. And what happens is basically we kind of collected all these prompts together, and then we use this website which is based off of a text model called GPT-3 and called pseudo-write. And we don't have to, I just chose pseudo-write because it's one of the really accessible text models. Yeah, so if there's anybody here who has a laptop, then they can jump onto this Jamboard. And I made a simple link called bit.ly/AI_icebreaker. And I'm thinking that, Kwan, maybe we can do something with the people that are in front of us. We can sort of get them to, I'm trying to think about how we can do this. We can kind of get them to just jump in, and each person can say a certain word to create a prompt together, and we can just see what happens when we input a prompt into pseudo-write.
Yeah, we can also pass the mic around.
Yeah, I was thinking we could do that. Cool. All right. So there are a couple people jumping on to the Jamboard, which makes me feel good. So this one was sort of version 1 that we completed. So if we jump onto, we could try number 3, and I think let's try doing this like maybe in a couple minutes. So I have quite a few different prompts that have some missing words. So yeah, I think we can try and fill out this one, and then we can get the people that are, for example, I'll show you quickly how this works if you have a laptop. For example, we can say, let's say we have a verb or something that I read that these 2 lesbians have just started, and I'm gonna say fighting. And so, yeah, if somebody wants to shout out some other stuff, I was thinking the people, we could also do it in a different way for the people in person, because I think it's a bit more difficult in their.
Maybe if anyone in the space has a word or a verb, noun, or adjective to that they want to add to the board, you can just raise your hand, and then I'll bring the mic around, and we can add it via Yasmin.
Yeah, I can write it. Yeah. So yeah, this icebreaker is all about kind of having this experiment about what happens when we kind of select different kinds of almost identities and markers of certain kinds of people, and how the model kind of takes these markers that we make. Yeah.
Dancing.
Dancing, nice. I'm gonna write dancing. And it doesn't have to be perfectly like this as well. Like we could kind of slightly change it.
Making love. Drumming.
Drumming. Drumming. Nice.
Zen garden.
What did you say, Kwan?
Zen garden.
Zen
Or
garden.
herb garden.
And I'm in their Zen garden. Let me edit that to be blue. Cool.
Waterfall.
Waterfall.
Kitchen. And then bathtub.
Nice. I think we've got a couple good ones, a good amount coming up. Flamboyantly voguing. Okay. They begin to have a, let's see. Okay, I'll give us like 1 more minute to add some more words. Unworldly. Nice. And what I would love is, what I did the first time that we did this is I sort of made the executive decision of what prompts we were going to actually pull together. But if there's anybody in the audience that has a sentence they'd like to piece together with all of our combined inputs, feel free to put that into the chat or let me know. So yeah, the one thing that I'm not sure about is, at least with the link that I'm on with Abdo, it's just the 2 of us. So I'm not sure if there's anybody else that's online right now. Yeah. But that's completely cool as well.
Sorry. Oh, Yeah, it's shared online. So there should be some people online.
It's on YouTube.
Right.
You're
Is
in
it on the
4
YouTube then?
Yeah, it's on YouTube. You're in 4
Okay.
places at the same time.
All right, cool. So maybe the people, whoever's moderating the YouTube, anybody that's on YouTube that wants to pop in a sentence that combines some of these phrases, that would be cool. Same with the people that are in person. And then we're just going to start generating some text from some of these crazy sentences. And let's see if we can get anything that's thoughtful, or just something that's completely random. Let's see. But it would be cool if existentially dreading. All right, I'm gonna write some text. I'm just gonna put some stuff together. But for example,
Also, Yasmin, there's a half a minute delay for the people on YouTube. Just
Cool.
to keep that in mind.
Nice. All right, that makes sense. Flamboyantly voguing is definitely my favorite one so far.
Flamboyantly
in there.
voguing and existentially dreading at the same time.
And existentially, I can just imagine you're like, okay, in their bathtub, they begin to have an ominous dinner. Okay. If everyone's happy with me trying this,
I just have to say, those are all my words.
are they? Oh my god. Well, obviously there's something that I felt compelled to put all of these words. Okay, so people online and on the Jamboard can keep adding some stuff, and feel free to write a sentence in the chat, and I'm gonna see what Abdo's words will make. So on pseudo right, basically, what's cool about this is there are multiple ways that you can kind of extend the beginning of a story. So the one caveat is that we need to have 20 words. So I'm gonna say in their bathtub, I'm gonna say for something, just adding some extra words that enables pseudo-write to actually generate something for us. So if we click on here, there are multiple kinds of ways that we can guide the text generator, but I'm just going to add an autocomplete, and it's going to give us some options down here. And let's see what kinds of outputs that pseudo-write decides to give us. And I might allow us to kind of, if everyone can read this, I might, if they can't, I might read it out a bit. So the first one says, among the dishes are a finger that has been severed. This is but one of the many gory acts in the movie. The idea is to make viewers sick enough to puke. This is how the movie was going for me. Yeah, so this is one of the outputs. Let's keep going and let's see what happens. One of them reveals that she thinks that she is too young to die, to which the other responds, "When do you want to die?" Smiling, she answers, "When I'm 90. The other girl then says, "I want to die when I'm 75, and then says, "No, I want to die when I'm 50, because life becomes boring after that." The other girl then says, "You're boring me now." The other girl then picks up a butcher's knife and says, "I just want to die." And then it ends with them saying they both then look into each other's eyes and smile. I think it's quite funny how both of these both of these outputs have a very like horror element to them. The final scene, we see a picture of the girls covered with blood and laying in their bathtub. So what we can see from here, I feel like these prompts are actually really original. This is very different compared to some of the other prompts that I've made with these particular sentence. So Abdul, maybe you actually, through your amazing word choice, actually making pseudo right create something that's quite that's quite cool. All right. I could keep on generating.
We've got a prompt from someone online as well.
Cool.
That it's two lesbians have just started dancing together in their kitchen. They begin to have a lovely pet.
Cool, let's do that. Can you repeat what you just said?
Two lesbians have just started dancing together in their kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
They begin to have a lovely pet.
Pet as in P-E-T, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we've got 3 more words that we have to add to make it, we have to write 3 more words. So let's have a quick thing. I'm just gonna make it a random open plan kitchen. Yeah, like GPT-3 really likes it when you kind of begin a sentence and then you kind of have a sort of like sentence that needs to be completed. So let's see what happens with this. So this first output, which seems, I can't seem to decipher it, but it says, the stage is set for a lesbian encounter. Written by Triv Wiz. What I like about pseudo-write and that I've noticed before is that they like to create sort of blurbs for films and blurbs for kind of like different film festivals and things like that. Let's second one. This video is the second in a new series of solo works for my friend Kelly. In the first video, Kelly is at the seaside. In this video, a new lover I'm seeing. She's more, and then just ... because it appears the model is sort of copying my sort of sentence structure. And then there's, what is interesting is sometimes with GPT-3, if other people have used it before, it seems to have almost this kind of strange realism that is still feels so absurd. So Kwan, I wanted to quickly ask you if we have time to do another one. Or maybe not.
We're running a bit behind schedule. We have a couple things left still tonight. Maybe let's see if there's some time.
I'll be quick. Do it.
Yeah, quick one.
Okay. Well, I would love to do one that has a slightly different kind of tone to it. But
Let's do it.
Okay. If we can do this in like 2 minutes, okay. I might do one really quickly because this potentially has a different tone to it. And just gonna do what I am. Let's see. I'm gonna quickly do this, and I'll definitely be as fast as I can. Gosh. A long day. What else? Okay. Hell of a strange day. Cool. All right, I'm gonna try doing.
Maybe while Yasmin is typing up the prompt and putting it into pseudo-write, like a nice information for everyone here is that this icebreaker like provides a really nice way to get the conversation started as well in between, like what are the stereotypes that show up in AI, and as we saw earlier, like when we use certain words in prompt generators, there's a certain kind of stereotype and a style that shows up, like just using the word ominous, and it gives really gory images, really violent pictures that's depicted in what's generated. And yeah, we'll see what with this next prompt, what shows up there as well.
So I just quickly wrote, a posh boy's walking home from school. He's tired after a hell of a strange day. When he turns the block, he sees something different. It's a pair of stockings hanging from a tree, and he sees a big-assed ape coming his way. If he wanted to get scared, he'd have to run, but he's never been good at running. Yeah, so you can see that, yeah, that this one has quite almost like the output is sort of like an action story, but at the same time, suddenly it goes in at the very end. At the very end, GPT-3 or pseudo-write loves to make things strange and say, "Come on in and enjoy this strange erotic tale. You're going to want to stick around for the ending." And then the other one is, when he turns the block, he sees something weird. There's a guy just standing in an alleyway looking at him. He feels a bit uneasy, but continues walking. And yeah, as you can see that, what I would love to kind of ask everyone that's online and in person is sort of thinking about how different ways of identifying people in a prompt affects the way that the text model generates stuff. And yeah, I can definitely share with you guys later on about some of the other prompts that that other people made. And yeah, it's really interesting to kind of see that some outputs can have bias, abuse, and prejudice. And this is especially when people are described with certain identity, religion, and sexuality traits. But that's also very dependent on what the model decides to do. So sometimes it can bring up these human biases and prejudices, and sometimes it's less obvious. But yeah, that's it for me for now, I think.
Thanks, Yasmin. And next up, we'll round of applause for you. Yeah, next up, we'll go into like a short, more interactive presentation with Abdo, and he might invite us to also discuss on some thoughts and ideas. So, Abdo, the floor is yours.
Oh, more interactive than that is not going to happen. But it's going to be a little chat about something that Nadia's mentioned already about activism. And I want to thank Yasmin a lot for, I think, the super nice bridge. I love playing with prompts in GPT-3. And I think there's like a little bit of push and pull whenever you play with them, as in like, oh, this is something cool. Even you see with pseudo-write, I love how they write, okay, magic is happening. As if there's some sort of otherworldliness about the output. But then every now and then you're confronted by some sort of like stereotype or like forms of algorithmic harm, and we don't know where to like, okay, we feel a little bit uneasy about what it wrote about this brown boy or these two lesbians, and we don't understand why this has happened. So this shows like the two sides that are going to be the main characters in my presentation. Let me try and share my screen first. Let me see. I hope y'all can see my screen. Can you see my screen? There's a mirror board. And
It's
now there's a
loading.
presentation.
Yeah, now it's up.
Okay, can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, so 43 slides, 3 interaction points in 30 minutes. Can I do it? Let's see. Let me first, I would love to see you all. I can no longer see you. Am I still there?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Okay. So the title of my talk, Data Activism Beyond Pessimism. And just to qualify a little bit what I'm doing, I want to tell you a little bit about my slashiness, right? So my name is Abdul Hassan. I lived multiple lives. Oh, this is too quick. I'm Egyptian. I'm in Egypt at the moment. I actually live in Amsterdam, but I've been enjoying the motherland for the past 2 weeks. I have studied software and I've studied anthropology, and now I'm working in the data field. I'm mainly interested about data ethics, but also data activism. So the radical and less radical version. I want to almost fight every monster that exists in the space. I've worked within academia, within the industry, with grassroots initiatives, and I just want to tackle the problem whenever it shows up. So the first thing I want to ask you before we move is about your relationship with your data. So think of all the data that you produce as like an object or a person. What is your relationship to it like? So I'm asking you to maybe personify the data or consider it your pet. What is it? Is it a toxic relationship? Are you completely avoidant? What is it? What is happening? And try to be as creative as possible with it. How are we going to answer? If you scan this, or if you go to slido.com and put in this code, which is, yeah, 3110581, and then hopefully you'll be in. And let me just add the first question. Okay, I see a few people typing already. All right. We're getting anxious, scary, uneasy, unaware. Unaware. Completely cooked, completely ignorant, no in between. There's love and war. Big looming ball I don't have control over. Situationship, I love that. Solo sock is getting very poetic very quickly. Lost children, avoiding, commodity, messy, chaotic. Okay, I'll leave it for another minute because, yeah, this is a lot of fun. Bad marriage. Let it be. Someone wrote promiscuous. Please tell me.
That was me.
Ah, can you please elaborate on this promiscuousness?
Have you ever read oh my god, I forgot. No, Kwan knows her, the author, Wendy Chun, Thinking Through Habit. She's a software theorist, and she just kind of talks about how data and sharing data is inherently promiscuous because like it leaks and it seeps. So like our relationship with sharing our data or sharing ourselves online is also a bit, a bit a bit like leaky. We kind of want to
It's like,
share our
are we
data.
slutty with our data?
Yeah, you get what I mean. Exactly.
No, I like this. And I like this because I think almost all of these entries have one or two themes that are common. Is that either there's really violent pessimism or helplessness, as in like, I have no idea what's happening. I don't feel in control, bordering on indifference. But even when you talk about promiscuity, it's like, oh, I'm losing control, but I'm also kind of enjoying it. I'm being playful about it. There's this kind of like kinky dynamic between me and the data. It's kind of enjoying this like loss of control or this conflict that we have with our data, right? And I think it's this is, to me, it's quite telling, and I could almost predict it a little bit, is that our relationship with data has been, well, I'm not going to tell you the agenda, has been a little bit defined by our imagination of what technological and data driven systems would be. And when I was younger, studying in university, I had a really great professor who actually died last week. So uh, rest in peace to him. He said, science fiction often becomes science fact. He's like, whatever we think in our movies often finds a way to reality. He almost says it's like a springboard of ideas. And if you look at the visual narratives that build the data that we have in ours at the moment, we can see these kinds of movies, right? We have Transcendence, we have Her, we have iRobot. I forgot what's on the bottom right, but what was on the bottom right? Can someone tell me? I made those.
Surrogate?
Surrogates, yeah, this was Surrogate. And you see they all have themes of this like hyper aware technological thing, this almost like super intelligent data driven system, especially in Transcendence. So Johnny Depp uploads his consciousness to this like ever present, really fluid system. Her, you have an AI that is very personal, and the guy falls in love with her. Surrogates is this whole idea of body doubles. And I became obsessed with the kind of imaginaries that all these movies as world building tools were building, and how somehow they're going to seep into our reality. And I started looking at all these like promotional videos that were created by multiple cities that were by like Microsoft, and especially this one video struck me as, okay, this is a vision that people needed, and I they're on their way to doing it. I think 2030 or 2020 something. It was a few years ago where they released this video, and you can see all the women of high surveillance, like every face is registered. You have this like car that is, as it's going around, it's everything in really high resolution. There's this one criminal who's going very quickly with a Lamborghini or a Ferrari, like a high sports car, and you have all these systems that are tracking their speed, that are recognizing the car plate number. You have aerial systems on the ground. They're all talking to each other very seamlessly. And it almost feels like they took a scene out of Terminator's like Skynet, and they're implementing it in real life. Right? So there's so many things that I've read in theory that were materializing this one video. And it became clear to me that even world building can become a colonial practice. Right? Is that, okay, we always say, let's build new worlds, let's talk about the future. But whenever we're in high tech spaces, we often go into tech solutionism, right? So you have all these spaces, you have all these concentrations of power like government, and they're constantly rethinking and reimagining our future. And they're pushing for all these technologies like facial recognition in public spaces, systems that assign you credits. So all these like critical life events that are decided by technology. And there's a lot of harm that is emerging from the techno push. And because you find yourself in situations where there's really high technology, but very like low regard to human life, I've started seeing more commonly notes of techno pessimism as people start feeling the other side of the AI is giving me fun things, but it's also being a little bit racist, and I don't understand what it's giving me. So what we start falling into is this idea of techno pessimism. And if you see the more recent kind of tech movies, you see that they are full of dark content. They are full of themes of techno-pessimism. You have more arid landscapes, very doomsday scenarios that make you feel uneasy about the progress of technology, right? Which I also have a problem with, this over problematizing of technology, because it makes it hard for us to identify the very day-to-day forms of violence that we see, right? So there are real applications of artificial intelligence and data. And the truth is, a lot of the times, because you're quite close to how they're being built, and we deal with them every day, we're developing them, we know that they're quite stupid. And basically, the machine human choreographies that go into making machine learning models are what generate what we can call algorithmic violence. And algorithmic violence can be a lot of things. Most people are exposed to personal forms of algorithmic violence, right? So I was shown an ad about pregnancy and I'm not trying to get pregnant. Or I'm not being told why I'm getting certain results or why my loan was rejected. But this violence actually is embedded because data-driven systems actually look at large patterns of data. They look at social patterns. They look at inventories of bias that we already have. The violence is actually not just personal, it is structural. So, and I've started connecting it to colonialism as a concept. And that work has already been done. And in the concept of data colonialism, there is a parallel that is being made between data and natural resources, which were the fuel to traditional forms of colonialism. You have a colonizer that sees that, oh, okay, I have colonial subjects with a lot of raw material, coal, gold, whatever, and I'm just going to go and colonize these raw material. So within data colonialism, you have like big tech companies that see data as something that is naturally available. We're just going to go get it. That is the first kind of faction of data colonialism. You also have a way to legislate what's happening. We see this in like terms of services that, okay, you're like, I'm just going to use the service. So I'm going to accept this without thinking. And the third thing is that we sometimes do it willingly, that we give away our data or we track ourselves obsessively because there is this kind of transaction or this idea that okay, this is how we're supposed to do things, right? And what happens as a result of this data colonialism is that ourselves as subjects, we're constantly being quantified in order to be controlled, right? So everything, your sleeping patterns are being quantified, your love relationships are being quantified, your work productivity is being quantified, and our personhood is kind of reduced to these data points. And colonialism is actually the combination of the historical extractive practice of historical colonialism and then what happens with this hyper quantification of everything, of personhoods and society. But then when I looked further, I'm like, okay, no, it's not just a parallel. It's not like data is like a resource and big tech is like the old colonial powers. There are very clear continuities because data is very spatial, right? People produce it in places, about places. It moves through networks that are servers that are in places. It affects places differently. And not Andrew Graham. Sorry, I'm forgetting the name. But there was research done by the University of Oxford Internet Institute that, okay, if you look at the geography of knowledge online, amongst multiple things, you'll find very clear old colonial patterns. So, for example, there is a lot more content coming out of Europe, but that most of the content coming out of or about Africa, or less than 3% of it, is not written by Africans, right? So we're still following the same colonial patterns, and we're reinforcing them through how we design data-driven systems. And when we talk about Wikipedia, it's supposed to be one of the most open source, democratized powers of the internet. So what makes of it when we talk about something that is a bit more regulated and a little bit more prone to private interest, like Instagram, Facebook, or the other big tech companies? So I saw a need of trying to reframe data, not just as a resource, if we really want to be decolonial about it, but as an object of collective care, right? This is something that we both need to collaborate on. This is something that we all need to start building on. We need to have some sort of like critical literacy. And I relied a lot on a concept called data worlds, which was by a researcher called Jonathan Gray. And what he does is that he goes like, all right, most of the data activism work that people do is about data protection or data liberation. So either making data open source, this is data liberation, or data protection, and like, oh, I need to look at my data, let's encrypt it. But data is much more than that. Data builds worlds, and there's all these elements of how together we can create a new reality with each other. I'm not going to go into with things. I started looking at like 3 points in AI pipe, right? So data moves from collection to being deployed in an AI system. And I was like, there's so many considerations. First of all, we have all the data sets that are there, right? The way we collect it, the type of data that we have. So there's not enough data about female experiences. There's not enough data about domestic abuse. There's not enough data about certain injustices. How can we have newer data collection practices that kind of elevate that kind of knowledge going into the AI systems, right? Because a lot of the time the bias is not in the system, but in the data going into the system. When we say a system is fair, what does that mean? There's 21 definitions of fairness. Which one do we choose for our problem? So that was another thing. So basically how you deploy the system, right? Are you deploying it automatically? So if you have a loan approval mechanism or loan approval algorithm, do you deploy it alone, or do you have a human in the loop that approves or goes like, okay, yeah, this sounds right, this sounds weird? Or do you not have AI at all? Or do you have even better, a community in the loop approach to talk about issues that we have still not figured out yet, right? So for example, we had this project where we wanted to build a bot that harasses abusers or harass, right? Wild idea. But we ran into the issue of there's a lot of these like sentences, a lot of things that people say that could seem like abuse, but are actually just ironic or very kind, or like, you know, have been reappropriated by communities. And a lot of these things, for in order for them to be classified, we needed to actually start a communal conversation. And we created a board game where you play the bot and you have to, with your other board members, decide if something is actually abuse or not. And based on that, you progress in the game. So that was a way in which we wanted to kind of survey this kind of alternate mode of governing these data-driven systems. We created an algorithmic inequality atlas. I won't talk about this, but what I do want to talk about is data activism project, because I was like, all right, we've scavenged a big landscape of problems of AI, of harms of AI. We know exactly where they occur. It is evolving knowledge. But I was like, okay, we're all dealing with data. We're all feeling uneasy about our relationship with data. There must be something we can all do. There must be a world building practice that we all can be aware of. And because our relationship with data sometimes is one that sparks joy, because, you know, we connect with friends using data-driven systems, we watch movies, we listen to music. So I wanted the activism to be just as playful and joyful, but at the same time critical and power conscious. And this was the idea of me talking 2 years ago to Nadia, and we're like, we want to create something that is accessible for everyone, a kind of a manual for everyday data hacktivism. How much time do I have?
10 minutes?
Good. Okay, I'll use 5 minutes of those 10 minutes to ask you all, so just in the same Slido thing, to tell me about some, wait, there's a new one. Well, you can think about it while it loads. Basically your relationship to, or what forms of data activism do you actually engage in your days? It could be something super simple, something that you're unsure is maybe activism at all, but I would love to know. So maybe you don't use Google, maybe you are not on your phone a lot, maybe use alternative things. I would love to know what kind of data activism. Oh, it just logged me out. One moment. Right, there it is. What forms of data activism do you engage in? If you don't feel like you engage in anything, you can maybe tell me what forms of data activism would you like to engage in? Removing cookies is an amazing one. 10-minute mail, I don't know. So I'm looking that up. Or maybe someone wants to share with me now what it is. No keys, VPN, Proton Mail.
10-minute mail is like a throwaway email website, so you can like use a temporary email for something.
It's a burner email. Great. Great. Ecosia is great. A dumb phone. Ad blocker is actually one of the most common forms, in my opinion, of data activism. Being anti-Google. I say this as I present from a Chrome account, Google account.
We're all full of hypocrisy. It's
But
hard.
it's also hard, right? So I feel like it's so easy to fall into this like pessimism or helplessness. But we have to understand that maybe it's an iterative process. All right, Firefox is, I think, activism, but it's also a little bit more nuanced than that. I can maybe tell you a little bit more about it, but I see what's happening. There's all these there's a good level of awareness here as to, okay, what kind of little contributions are we making, right? There is at least conscious use of all these invasive, pervasive, data-driven systems, right? So thank you for sharing all of that. And maybe I can start introducing this everyday data activism project, which is really about building a playful, power-conscious literacy. So how I approached it was, first of all, through a mapping practice. So I wanted to map where can we make intentions. So what are the problem areas that we all need to, or that we all can intervene in? And I'll just take you to the Miro board, which is really beautiful, colorful. So the first session was all about mapping failure, fields of struggle. So where is data harming us? And for every session, there was beautiful reading list and it's to share ideas. And first thing we did is this huge map of all the things that we use, all the problems that we used, right? And who are they a problem for? So right, we have self-driven cars. This is not great, but let's say dating apps, they're used by trolls, advertisers, police, policymakers, user segments, or non-mainstream, or alternative groups. And then we have detailed the types of harm that people have come up with. And from there, we've made almost like a map or pyramid of harm. So we started from benign or unintentional, something that is really villainous, like you're selling people without their consent. You you're not being transparent about how you're going to use it. So everything from benign to villainous. Of course, there is nuances, caveats to these processes. But we kept going. And then we even detailed the type of data sets we don't have. And then we started creating problematic data worlds. So we're like, what is the worst scenario of anti-harassment method or of being that collapse to your dream? So we have let our imagining loose. In the second session, however, we wanted to get a little bit more tangible as to what data activism is. And we all kind of agreed the data should be playful, it should tell a story, it should be accessible, it should be audited, but very fluid, right? And the subjects themselves, so the data is in a vacuum, but people are often animating the data. They're often giving it the shape. So we kind of defined a collaborative manifesto and then we defined fields of struggle. So basically areas like governance, love, geography, cities and public spaces, credit, finance. And then eventually we started a long process of understanding what can we do or what little interventions we do. And we tried to capture this in a card deck that is still evolving. The idea of the card deck is maybe the nice graph is have cards, these black problem cards. Where there's bias text model. So this from Yasmin's example. This is a problem. What can we do? There are 3 levels of action. First level of action is that you have a thought. A thought card is like a paradigm shift. It's like maybe I can tell you, hey, text models are not magical things. They're based on inventories of human knowledge. We actually don't know how they generate their text, and maybe that is part of the problem. Then we have an action card. So that could be a method that someone has detailed out or a tool. And then we have a community card. So this is a way to organize collective action. So think community card is something as low tech as okay, there's a far right hashtag and we're posting BTS meme or K-pop memes on it just so that the disinformation doesn't go far. This could be a data activism move. And it could be a very high tech thing as in, oh, okay, let's start an alternate platform and create it in that way. So it could be something that is an intervention in something that is existing, or it could be like an entirely new avenue of struggle resistance. We also have the action cards, which are more technical or a more tangible thing that you can do tomorrow. It'd be like, all right, maybe I can join a data union. Maybe I can block my ads, or maybe I can use this alternate browser. So what we have now is a set of cards that are still growing. So we have at least 13 constants to this card deck, and they're going to keep adding more of the conversations or more ideas from the conversations into this card deck. And I would like to be for this to be as participatory and open source as possible. So I'd also like to invite you all to contribute to this. If you have any ideas based on the very kind of rough, fuzzy explanation that I gave, is that you reach out to me or AIxDesign and maybe share a little bit about what the activism is that is there, you'd like to add it to the cards, or that you'd like to create that is not there, but you'd like to create. And I feel like I went too much time. But that's for now. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Abdul. And yeah, I don't know if anyone here has any questions or if people online have questions for Abdo.
I feel like I cut out so much.
Data activism, do you see that as something personal or related to your work?
Can you maybe elaborate? Is it personal to me or is it personal to the
yeah, is it in a
people using
so the data activism, what you could do, it's more or less procedures, what you were proposing. Do you see that as something that you could apply in your personal life or in work?
This is a great question because I work in the digital ethics field. That is my job. But I think it's hard to distinguish because a lot of the time when we use a platform, we're also shaping it. So let's say I decide tomorrow to use Instagram in a different way, that I'm let's say, posting only black squares in protest. It also changes a little bit about how the algorithm functions. But there are clear distinctions between personal use. So let's say if I want to treat my data in a certain way, but there's also a programmer who is more concerned with the design of the algorithms, then the toolkit should serve both in a way, right? Because as a programmer, I know what the problems are. I have all the set of problem cards that can tell me, okay, this is the issues with platforms as they exist, with data-driven systems as they exist. And here's some ways in which people are resisting. So I can use these two things as like design prompts off it almost. But then as a person, I am not helpless anymore because I know what I can do to talk back to these like platforms that are talking to us every day. I don't know if this really answers your question.
Maybe it's a rhetorical question because I think it's actually for me as a designer, it's work and not personal. Personal, you can be an activist as a group, but not as an individual.
Ah, I see. I see. This is a good question. I think part of the sessions I invited people to think about what being an activist means, right? And we also talked about data points that belong to one person are important, but alone they can't do anything. Data-driven systems work on aggregation. So I go like, all right, you're a designer, you like these things. Only if I find enough people that like similar things, is there actually value to any of this data, right? It doesn't value uniqueness. So yeah, I don't know if we can synthesize something from there. So it's something to think about. Whether there can be truly individual forms of action.
Yeah, and just as also, because maybe there's some thoughts that are popping up, and as Abdo said, if you're interested in adding stuff to the Miro board, we also have one open on one of the computers at the table for the people who are here in physically, and for the people online, we can post the Miro board link on the chat. Are there any more questions for Abdo? This one online?
How can we benefit from data? For example, isn't it bad to share data if they offer personalized option?
Can you repeat the last sentence?
For example, isn't it bad to share data if they offer personalized options? Like they means tech company or platforms.
Can you maybe give an example of over personalization?
We have to we have to wait 30 seconds. Maybe while we're waiting on that question, if anyone in this space has more questions, feel free to.
No, but I like that question.
Maybe it also relates to another question, like if we talk about environmental data, like gathering data about the environment, is that a bad data practice? Is it being misused, or is it the data also being used for a good purpose? I think these are always this kind of a balance, which is always pretty hard. But I don't know.
Yeah. What I can say, so the question is like, is gathering data about the environment bad? And I think the answer to this is really annoying, which is it depends, right? It's not inherently bad, it's not inherently good. It's how you position your data collection practice. If I'm collecting data about the environment to control it, if I want to reduce, so there's a lot of problems with surveying or collecting data about indigenous lands or disputed indigenous lands in certain places, right? And there are multiple narratives about very scientific, otherwise scientific phenomena. So when you collect data about air pollution and you're thinking, is the air pollution in that area high or low, there's multiple political factors that can shape your understanding of that data. So collecting data about the environment in itself is okay. What you do with it, how you frame it, is the data contestable, for example? Is there ways for someone to cause dissent, or to be like, all right, this is not the story that makes sense to me. I'm affected by this information, and this is not the full story, or there's missing aspects of that story. So if you collect data and you make it an official story and make it undisputable, then that is in itself a form of algorithmic violence. And here is a good moment to mention data feminism as a framework, because in data feminism as a framework, they detail what good data practices that are based on a feminist ethics of care looks like. And part of it is that, okay, you're collecting data, but there is elements of plurality, there's elements of I can contest or cause dissent or practice dissent on the data that I'm given. And in answer to the first question, if I remember correctly, is actually the same answer to this question, is that how can we use data for good? And there was a link with hyper-personalization, which I don't yet grasp too much, but it's the same world-building practice, is that, okay, you want to elevate, for example, indigenous knowledge. And if you center indigenous knowledge in your data world building practices, if you collect the right data sets, you involve the right people, if you're quite iterative and encompassing, and you hold space for these people to participate in this kind of data-driven practice that concerns them, then you're using data for good. So the premise itself of the data system is not to exploit someone, but to elevate their knowledge, is to level the balance of power. If you're centering female or queer perspectives, if you're centering POC perspectives, if you are having a better distribution of income or financial power through data, then that is definitely data for good.
Yeah, and
Nice. I want to just build on up there with two like practical projects or like real projects that I really like and I think can illustrate some of these like practices Abda's talking about. So one is this like gender pay gap bot. It's like a very go-to but very good example. So on International Women's Day, I think it was maybe this year or the one before, you know how all companies go to Twitter and they're like, oh yeah, we stand by women, blah, blah, blah. There was this bot that was basically programmed to like tweet back at them with like the gender pay gap in their company, which is data that you can kind of extract from websites like Glassdoor, or like, you know, where people like employees can anonymously share their job and how much they make and so on. So in this case, someone used this job and employee experience website, Glassdoor, and the data on there to kind of build this bot that tweets back. And I think, yeah, this was such a like cool way of doing sort of using data, or using a bot, or using sort of automated, you know, response in a interesting way, or like in a way that actually draws awareness to something important. And sort of using this, scraping this data, which is an extractive, you know, practice, but using it for the right kind of cause. So yeah, I really love this subversive bot. And I think it's a great example of something that you could do with, you know, you have to know a little bit of programming, but not that much. And another project I think is really interesting, I don't remember the name or even exactly the country. I think it was I'm pretty sure it was in South America, I think maybe Venezuela, but not sure, where they would, they made a website to basically collect data from women like, yeah, facing domestic abuse, because within sort of the institutional ways of them like documenting, flagging this domestic abuse, you know, was not safe for them to just like go to the police officer and be like, hey, you know, this is what I'm facing at home. And so nobody really knew that, you know, people know it's an issue, but how much and where and in what. So it's like a missing data set. And I think there's a few amazing examples as well, Abdo, I don't know, you're better at remembering stuff generally than me. But there's a few amazing examples of people using like online, you know, sort of democratized data collection as a way to create these missing data sets, which then can be used as a proof point, you know, to make things happen. Because if you don't have the data in this world, it's not, you know, people will question, how is that really true? How do you know? It's anecdotal. So data is important. And I think if it's like in line with these causes, even data collection can be like a really caring practice. So yeah, those were two projects I think are really inspiring, and I think sort of illustrate some of the things you're talking about. Yeah, thanks. Abdo, back to you.
Thank you so much. No, this is great, and I think I feel now I need to make one small note, because
Okay, and then we go have beers, okay?
And then you can have your beers. When I was a little bit younger, I'm actually a child of like the Egyptian Revolution in 2011, right? So a lot of the activism that we grew up with was like very ride or die, right? It's either you challenge power in all you can, it's either you put yourself in the front line or it doesn't work, right? And I was actually talking to Ploy earlier today, which is another member of AIxDesign. I don't know if she's here. And we talked about, okay, so a lot of these like data activist things sometimes come under criticism. For example, there is a great project here in Egypt. Harassment is a big issue, so it's almost similar to the one Nadia was talking about, where victims of you know, public harassment, verbal or physical, they made a harass map, basically the kind of interventions that happened. Did someone intervene? Was there a bystander effect or not? And people would always go like, oh, wait, but are you not then exposing certain areas as unsafe, right? Because maybe areas with higher condensation of people, or like that are kind of like lower on average income, more harassment happens. Are you not singling out these areas? Are you not deeming them as unsafe, right? And with every kind of intervention, you have this kind of like critical voice, which is great. But I think part of this project and part of the guiding ethics of this project is not to fall too much into perfectionism. Is that I'm going to create my intervention and I'm going to open dialogue about it. I'm going to have in it space for dissent again. So not to fall too much into this like perfectionism trap, because on the other side, so kind of more power hungry entities, more powerful entities are moving much quicker. They're not waiting for our perfect understanding of the problem. So that is also like one thing to consider, right? There's always going to be a little critical aspect that we need to be open to whenever we make an intervention. But we have to start. We have to have a playful literacy. So play as a form of being literate, and then collectively we're going to have a better understanding of what works and what doesn't. That was it.
Yes, thanks, Abdo. So I hope that gave you guys lots of thoughts to think about how you interact with your data daily, and hope we haven't like given you too much feeling of doom, but more that there is agency, and that we can actually playfully and in different ways. There are different creative methods in which we can play with our data. And now I just want to give you guys like a quick break to go use the bathroom or check out some of the projects that we have there, and then we'll come back and close the evening with a presentation from Yasmin. And maybe before we go off, Yasmin, do you want to explain a bit of the Energizer exercise that we have set up on the table?
Sure. Okay. So basically, I made this as part of an icebreaker for a talk that was centered around the body. So essentially, if you don't know what PoseNet is, it's just a machine learning model that can detect someone's pose. And I essentially ripped off the one of Gene Kogan's P5JS sketches, and I kind of made it a little bit different so that people could kind of change the different notes that would play. So it was a mixture of sound that would then change depending on essentially the position of the person's nose or face. So yeah, I would say play around with it, and you can sort of change the notes from numbers like 1 to 5. And there should be some instructions on the P5JS sketch if you see it. But yeah, hopefully it's fun.
Yeah, and for the people online, we'll put the link in the chat. And we've done this exercise as well before online with multiple people, and we would turn the volume up, and it would be a little bit of like musical jamming, where the music might not make sense, but it's still fun. So feel free to check that out. Yeah, and we'll come back in 10 minutes just to finish off the evening. So we've got everyone back here in the space, hopefully online as well. So in the next couple minutes or so, Yasmin will present to us some of her works with AI or about AI. And I find these to be really interesting in terms that it provides you different layers in which we can touch upon AI, not only as either developers or designers, but also just to think of AI at different levels. And you'll see this reflect in the projects that Yasmin will talk about. So go ahead and take off.
Thanks, Kwan. Yeah, so about the forward slashes again, I guess I kind of introduced myself to a lot of people as being a computational artist, whatever on earth that means. And I kind of like using the word artist just because I think it makes me feel good. But I think that I do a lot of different kinds of things that bridge far more than just being an artist. Yeah, and yeah, I wrote this little bio which basically talks about how I'm interested in speculative futures around AI. And I've been interested in the imaginary of artificial intelligence for quite a couple years now. And yeah, I kind of want to show you guys and talk a bit about some of the projects that I've recently made. So yeah, I wanted to quickly actually talk a bit about the work that I did with AIxDesign this year. And you can see my face on some of the videos that I've made that, you could probably see on the AIxDesign Instagram, kind of reflecting on some of the stuff that I've made. And yeah, I think something that I want to kind of talk about with that's kind of been the most challenging aspect of working and thinking about AI is that it requires a lot of manpower. And what I mean by that is physically, physically AI requires a lot of data, a lot of energy to train models. And here I am being very ambitious and naive almost about what I really want to do. And yeah, I kind of talk about how I have these grand ideas of making my own kinds of models that were actually trained trained by NVIDIA, literally $1 billion company, and I'm thinking I can do it myself. And I think I can. It's just going to take me way longer. And I kind of found what's been so rewarding about working with AIxDesign has been sort of kind of democratizing the knowledge around AI. And you can see I've made a few infographics. It's definitely changed my opinion on them. And a lot of people have messaged me and told me things like, you know, I learned a lot from these very small, very dense pieces of information. And I think, yeah, that's been really great to kind of put in the work to make it very accessible for people that don't have the time or the bandwidth to really research about these kinds of topics. Yeah, so that's kind of the stuff that I've been doing with AIxDesign. And a piece that I made earlier this year with two of my friends is actually an augmented reality piece called Modular Extraction. Yeah, and I kind of want to tie this in with a bit of what Abdo was saying when he was talking about data as companies seeing data as a natural resource. There is a book called Atlas of AI by Kate Crawford, which came out last year. And if you haven't read it, I highly recommend if you're interested in sort of the planetary costs of artificial intelligence. It's sort of a pessimistic book, I feel, because it basically tears down the myth of AI as being this magical entity that kind of lives above the environment or whatever. But this modular extraction piece was sort of speculating on these kinds of layers of extraction and how these different layers could sort of be moved around. So we wanted to use AR because we just thought it would be cool to experiment with what happens when these different modules of extracting this purple gloop and how it could move around. And to be honest, I want to show you the diagrams that come from Kate Crawford's Atlas of AI, and you can see it just kind of shows how what is being built from machine learning is sort of these layers that stem from mining these materials to the humans that put in all of the work into creating these kinds of testing models, and then to these databases, and furthermore to the interfaces that we end up using. And I just thought it was such a striking visual image for me to be like, there's so many components going into AI technologies or AI companies. And I was recently reading an article by this AI ethics researcher called Timnit Gebru, and she's sort of this quite outspoken AI researcher, and she wrote an article and was stating that one study says that 40% of AI companies don't use AI in a meaningful way. So AI is sort of this it's this hype word. I'm not using the correct word, but it's all these companies that are trying to use automation are actually end up having to rely on jumping back in and getting humans to kind of fake the AI. And I think that's something that's really interesting for me as well, is sort of this, we're not trying to really, like our aim for AI, at least for me right now, it doesn't seem like it's to actually make a machine sentient or make sentience, but it's more like to make the appearance of sentience. So it's almost like us as humans are being, we want to kind of create this sort of non-living entity, and that poses such interesting questions for myself, something that I've been interested in for a while. So yes, these were kinds of the 3D models that me and my friends made for this modular extractive pipeline. Yeah. And yeah, this kind of goes on to what I'm talking about with sort of the ability or the tendency for us as humans to anthropomorphize non-human things. And this led me to this project, this net piece called Amorphous Butterfly. And I basically say how this is a speculation on machine-mediated relationships. As I was doing a lot of research, I was thinking, okay, instead of thinking about humans having a relationship with machines, what about us as humans witnessing, like, could we see two machines being sentient and having sort of their own relationship with each other? And how I kind of tried to explore that was by creating these two abstract, almost, I call them deities, because just the way that they looked is so like ethereal. And I made this with GLSL Raymart shaders. And they kind of move in this 4D world, and they have this kind of their own personality to them. And I basically say how I basically trained these two language models, and I kind of get them, they don't really even have a proper conversation. It's sort of these texts are being generated in tandem with each other. But I kind of wanted to explore like how easy it is, or like what it is like to experience sort of machine having a conversation. Yeah, and I know that we're really close to ending this this meetup, so I think I kind of want to provoke some sort of like questions here on sort of the future of what we're thinking about when we think about artificial intelligence. And I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen and maybe even played with a lot of the image generation models. And something I want to point out is, you know how amazing these images are being generated and how lifelike and how artistic and creative they seem. We don't see that as sentience, but we see text and we see language as being more alive than than a machine making a really good image. So I think that a lot of it is about language and how we feel to have this sort of like empathy towards it. And yeah, I kind of want to end on this sort of term that I read very recently called empathy crisis. Is that as we kind of keep on developing these technologies, and as especially when GPT-4 comes out potentially next year, and it becomes harder to distinguish between, I guess, between a generated output and a real human's output. I think there will be people that will sort of have this empathic crisis towards these machines and these technologies that we are creating. Yeah, and that's kind of something that I've been thinking about a lot. And yeah, my research has been, I don't know, I want to get back into thinking about these problems, and yeah, how easy it is to feel this kind of familiarity with words, and that's simply all it is, really. Yeah. Um, Let me see. I think that is all that I really have to say. There's like loads more stuff that I could talk about, but I kind of wanted to share with you. If you want to get in touch with me or check out some more of my work, I have my website and my email. And if you're on LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn as well. But if you got any questions or any thoughts, then yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Yasmin. And before we close up the night, I just want to open the floor really quickly for some brief Q&A. If anyone has any questions for Yasmin, now's the time.
Related to your book, maybe you're interested, related to your art, maybe you're interested in a book, and it's called The War with the Nudes. And it's actually
Never heard of it.
The War with the Nudes. It's almost 100 years old. It's a classic from Karel Capek. And it describes, it's about a sea captain who needs labor workers. And these are the nudes, and the nudes at a certain moment get humanized.
Mhm.
That was a recommendation.
That sounds awesome. I'll definitely check it out. Thank you. But yeah, it's kind of this thing. Initially, people may end up seeing AI as being enslaved by humans. Yeah, you never know. You never know. But I find that such an interesting potential future.
Any more questions? Otherwise, yeah.
So I have two questions. One is, do you feel like you're doing clever hands example when you build this project? Because this speculation for me, it seems like you're also putting the clever hand example on your vision.
Could you tell me what you mean by clever hand?
The clever horse is also in Alice of AI. They were this person training horse, and people thought it was artificial intelligence. So I was questioning, is there really intelligence? Because I don't know how to train these models. So I question how you train them, that you see there's language between them.
Yeah, in all honesty, the intelligence isn't there. What it truly is there, and what machine learning really is essentially statistics. It's aggregating and normalizing and finding patterns within a data set. And I guess what I did with this project with the Morphous Butterfly is sort of experiment with how an audience might ask themselves, are they having a conversation? Are they trying to talk to each other just from having these models kind of generate text? So yeah, I'm definitely not trying to say that they are intelligent at all, but it's sort of playing with that mask that a lot of machine learning, it kind of relies on, or the mythology around that.
Yeah.
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 I think AI is a lot like that.
It's really successful work. And how do you see you can do sustainable approach on training machine?
I think about that a lot because right now it's not sustainable at all. Because especially with what I'm doing is I don't train on my own GPU. I train on the cloud, like with Google Colab. So yeah, like the ethical issue is that I don't have any awareness of the amount of energy that I'm actually using, and also not even thinking about I'm just this one little artist doing my little project, let alone thinking about these companies that are making these multi-billion, trillion parameters of models. Yeah, I have no real answer for you about how this could be environmentally sustainable, unfortunately.
Yeah, this also I'm finding the answer because I'm interested in training the machine myself. So yeah, I'll probably also go to Google and use their render farm cloud. But yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no worries. It's something that seems so difficult to like move away from, and I think working with technology in general, I think it's constantly in my head of I'm making work that is that requires so much energy, you know. So yeah, it's a very big problem that I haven't put in enough, that I haven't, you know, it's that one thing that at the moment I still kind of keep to the side and think that I'll sort it out later. But yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a question that as artists we like question a lot about, like the technology that we use and how that's affecting our society, but like how does it reflect in our work, and how can we challenge that while using those tools still as well.
One really quick way of reducing your AI experimentation footprint is by doing it locally on your computer instead of in the cloud, which I don't always do, but it is something you can do. That already makes a huge difference. Even like Stable Diffusion, which is a recent like text-to-image model, you can run it on Google Colab, but you can quite easily run it on your computer with like 2 things on your terminal. So it's like still sort of, you know, like easy to get into, and that then uses way less computing power already just because it's running on your own machine. There's also this thing called federated machine learning, but this is not so much about making art, but about like the product, like the stuff that's running all on my phone and sending stuff over to all those apps and back. There's a lot of machine learning that could just happen on the phone rather than it's sort of being sent up and down, which is also much more sustainable. So same idea as like edge computing or whatever, that it has to just travel less. And so it's less, whatever, like less energy, less disturbance. So that's called federated machine learning, but that's not art, that's like Google products. But yeah, that's a thing to look into if you're wondering about the sustainability of AI. That's it.
Thanks, Nadia. And yeah, with I'd like to conclude the night. And thanks everyone for being here. I hope our program has given you like a nice overview of what we do at AI and Design. And if you're interested, you can always check out our website, join our community, or reach out to us for any like questions or collaborations, or if you have any research questions you're interested in exploring. We're always open, and we'd like to have this space and provide platform for everyone to look into these questions around AI and design. For the people online, thank you so much for joining, and I hope we'll see you guys again soon. And for the people here, I don't know, Fabian, to what degree they're allowed to hang around. Yeah, so feel free to hang around, check out the project some more, talk to each other, get to know each other, talk to us. And thank you, everyone.
I mean, what's going on? Am I on the like loudspeaker? What did you say? Well, thank you, everyone. So fun just being a person on a screen. Um, but I think I will go. Have fun in your life. Bye.